Hey guys, got asked a question on my previous video on finding your gun number in reference to wind. If I could use some examples of different distances and different speeds. So again, if you don't know how to find your gun's wind number, please go to the other video, check it out. So then that way these will make more sense if you have no idea what I'm talking about. I don't want to go through it again here because it was a whole video all on its own, which probably took 10 or 15 minutes. And I'm trying to keep this one under 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to use a 308 standard gun number, 308, which is usually 4 miles an hour, unless you have a juiced up gun, but I want to keep it super simple just for the purpose of making it easy to understand. So a 4 mile an hour gun, 308 caliber. Okay, now again, just to set the baseline, that's mean when I say I have a 4 mile an hour gun, that means range to target out to a certain distance. In 308's case, it's actually 600, so I'll add this extra number down here just to make it easier. Range to target is my wind call. Okay, for full value wind, left or right, just depending on direction, but only full value wind. Okay, what that means is at 100, a 4 mile an hour wind is 0.1, left or right, full value. 200.2, 300.3, 400.4, 5.5, and 6.6. Again, full value wind. Okay, so the first thing I want to cover in reference to regardless of distance but different wind speeds is when I am thinking in that gun number, I'm also thinking in gun number brackets, right? So first thing, if I have a 4 mile an hour gun, my first wind bracket is 4 mile an hour, right? Because that's what I've determined is my gun's number based off of using the ballistic solver, like I said in the previous video. But I'm thinking in multiple brackets as I go in case the wind is not 4 mile an hour. Okay, so it will usually go up to about 4 brackets. So we have 4, 8, 12, 16. Mile an hour, mile an hour, mile per hour. Okay, you can go to a 5th bracket. I like to keep it under 20 miles an hour because at that point I think the wind is starting to get a little bit too fast and it requires some more things to confirm my wind call. But I would still start with the gun number, but I wouldn't just base my call off of just the gun number. Okay, obviously I would be, because I'm trying to pinpoint that wind a little bit better, because when we get to 20 mile an hour plus, being off by 1 mile an hour is completely on the target or off the target type misses based off of bad wind call. Okay, so bracket 1, bracket 2, 3, 4, and 5. The reason I have them numbered this way, obviously, besides that it's logical as far as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is also bracket 1 means I am multiplying my range by that number. So I'm multiplying by 0.1. Bracket 2, I am multiplying by 0.2. Bracket 3 by 3, 4 by 4, and if I required, 5 by 5. Okay, so what that means is 100 times 1 gives me a 0.1. Okay, because again, I'm multiplying to get a mil number. Okay, so if, let me clean this up really quick, if I had to go to 8 mile an hour because I'm working in my second wind bracket because that's what the wind speed is at. So I have an 8 mile an hour wind, I'm going to multiply by 2. So same distance, 100, but 0.1 times 2 gives me 0.2 for my wind call, full value wind. Makes sense because 8 mile an hour is twice as strong as 4 mile an hour. Right, just like 12 mile an hour is 3 times as strong as 4 mile an hour, which is where I get those numbers of multiplying by 1, by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5. Okay, so again, one more example. If I had same distance, 100, and I was working at 12 miles an hour, 0.1 times 3 is going to give me 0.3 for my wind call, full value left or right. Okay, so cleaning this up. That's the first thing that I'm going to be thinking of after I have established a wind number, is those brackets. Okay. Again, now if you were running a 5 mile an hour gun, obviously those numbers would be different, right? Because our first bracket would be 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20 would be the numbers. Just for quick reference, I'll bring it up here. 4 mile an hour would be times 1, 8 times 2, 12 times 3, 16 times 4, and 20 times 5. Okay, for our brackets. Now, let's change the wind speed to a number that's not working in our brackets. So let's say we had a 400 yard target at 7 mile an hour. Let's go with 6 mile an hour. That'll make more sense. Oops, sorry. Board's not working the way I want it to right now. At 6 mile an hour. Again, full value. Okay, so I go to 400. I know my baseline for 4 mile an hour is 0.4. I knew if I was in the second wind bracket at 8, I would multiply by 2, which would give me a 0.8 wind call, full value. So I've got my 2 starting numbers. Now I have 6 mile an hour. Fortunately, the reason I went with 6 is, again, make it a little, right, we do this in a logical manner. That's halfway between 4 and 8. So technically, this would be a multiply by 1.5. That's half of a wind bracket. So I'm adding 1 wind bracket plus half of a wind bracket. So at 400 times, right, 0.4 times 1.5 is going to give me 0.6 for 6 mile an hour. Now it just so happens in this particular example, that's exactly half and half. So to fill in the gaps, if I had a 5 mile an hour wind, it would be 0.5. If I had a 7 mile an hour wind, it would be 0.7. Okay. Now, if we change the distance, this is where we might start to see some things that are a little bit weird, but we have to remember that when we are using this technique, we started off with a ballistic calculator, we wrote all the numbers down, and we went 2 numbers past the decimal, and then we rounded. Okay, so if we were at 600, we'll change the distance to the far one. Okay, so I know 4 mile an hour is 0.6. So 8 mile an hour would be times 2 would be 1.2 for 8 mile an hour. So we can see right now that's already a huge gap. That's got more numbers in between than we have wind speeds in between, right? So with the 6 mile an hour, we would do the same thing, right? We get a 1.5 to multiply. So we can do 0.6 times 1.5 is going to give us a 0.9. That would be 6 miles an hour. Now if I filled in my 5 mile an hour, my 7 mile an hour, the numbers wouldn't be as easy as before where it's just adding 0.1. Okay, so here with 5, we're probably looking at like a 0.7 or 0.8. So more than likely it's a 0.75, right? Because it's half and half. And here would probably be like a 10.5. Oh, sorry, 10.5 is not correct. I meant to say 1.05. Makes my numbers up. But again, we can't add a 0.05. We can't add a 0.05. So in this instance, it's on the shooter to decide if you want to round 2.7 or round 2.8. And here, it would be if you want to go to 1.0, or if you want to go to 1.1. In my personal opinion, I always lean towards the stronger number, so I would always go to 0.8 or 1.1. Again, it's not a perfect science, because when we're using the gun number and the wind brackets, we're getting a 90 to 95% solution. I made those numbers up. They're not, that's not actual science behind that. But it's because we had to drop these numbers off to make the numbers make sense for something we can actually click on our windage turret or hold on the subtensions of our reticle and our scope. Okay, so again, the nice thing to remember is, again, we're only working out to 600. If you're using a better caliber like a 6.5, you could push out to 7. But this 0.05 of a mil is not going to cause you to miss the target. It's not a big enough adjustment. So again, what you may see, right? And if we know this is going to happen, then we are doing everything right and we're okay. Is on my target, I may aim here, but because I rounded up, I might hit right there. All right, or if I round it down, I might hit right here. Now, if I see these kind of impacts, that looks weird, I don't like it. But if I see impacts in those areas, I know that the round went where it was supposed to go based off the fact that I had a slight deviation in wind because I had a round, right? And so it's still point of aim, point of impact in my opinion, but again, it's just not right where the crosshairs went, okay? So I hope that helps kind of clarify how you can apply your wind number with the different distances and different wind speeds, and then how to apply the brackets. Okay. If you have any other questions, I'll leave that up there. If you guys have any other questions, please drop them in the comments. I'll be more than happy to go over them. And then just a side note, because it was asked as well about, can you do this with minutes of angle? I don't know the math off the top of my head like I do with the mils, because I'm a mils guy. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to run the numbers and get it all figured out. And then I'll probably do a video on how you can apply this to minutes of angle for you guys that are still using minute of angle scopes. It's just a little bit tricky because if you have quarter minute adjustments or half minute adjustments, the process is the same, but you're trying to line up the numbers based off of quarters or halves. So I have to sit down and actually write it all out. And probably do same thing on the board, but I'll have my notebook with me so I don't mess you guys up. Again, any other questions, please drop them in the comments. And I look forward to hearing from you guys. All right, thanks.